Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a CorelDraw class. We're going to be navigating the CorelDraw workspace. We're going to be looking at how we can break down the workspace, the user interface for CorelDraw. So this class is for beginners and it's an introductory class to CorelDraw. So without wasting much time, let's begin. First thing you want to do is to install your CorelDraw. You could install a trial version or a good version. You could buy the CorelDraw version. I use CorelDraw 2021, and so I will load it up. And after loading it up, the next thing I'll do is I'll be met with the welcome screen. And at the welcome screen, if you've not used CorelDraw ever, you might see a couple of other menus arranged at the side. But if you've been using it, you'll see a couple of recent files, recent works, lined up here. Now, just a quick detail, CorelDraw is a vector editing program in case you do not know. And in graphics, we are working with two types of objects, vector shapes, and we're also working with raster objects. And vector objects are mostly objects that are made up of lines and curves. Basically, in this category, we talk about shapes, we talk about text, and lines, these are like vector objects. And when we talk about raster objects, we are looking at things like pictures, images, and every other thing or anything that you probably do in Photoshop. So, but let's just say CorelDraw works mostly. The strength of CorelDraw lies mostly with creating vector designs, right? So you could do things like layouts, you could do things like magazine covers, you could do things like book layouts, you could do ebooks, you could do flyers, you could do vector logos and the rest of them here. So the first thing you want to do is create a new document. You can see a plus sign there, so you hit it and it shows you a dialog box. Here you can put the name of your document, whatever name it is. If it's a magazine, you could write it there, and the number of pages you can indicate it from here. So if you want to have a 5-page document, this is where you indicate. And if you want a page view for your design, you could choose between CorelDraw's two main page views. We have the single page view that allows you to view just one page at a time, and then we have the multi-page view that lines everything up like an artboard, right, side by side, so you can have that. And then we have the primary color modes, which indicates the type of colors you want to work with. If you are doing the design for print, you will work with CMYK, which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, right? So this is the color mode you work with when you're doing a design that is definitely going to be printed. If you're doing a design for the web, for social media, for your WhatsApp DP, or you want to send a message to your girlfriend, you could use RGB and that will do it perfectly. All right, and so because of that, we're going to be using RGB. And then the page size, you can indicate the page size. For now, we just leave it as A5, which is practically okay because we're not printing it, so it's not necessary we stick to size. And then here you can see the width and the height indicated. And if this by any chance is changed to maybe any other units other than this, you could put it back to inches. I think inches is the best you should work with when you're working in or trying to create documents in CorelDraw. And then the orientation is set to portrait, and we have landscape as well. So if you're doing the landscape design, a design where the width is wider and the height is shorter, you could switch to landscape. And then the resolution, you could set it as at 300 for rendering. Basically, that's for seeing objects like raster objects is going to be appearing in 300 resolution, as well as when you're exporting or you're done designing and you want to render your design, it's going to appear by default as a 300 dpi design. That has changed in recent times, but you could always still set it. And your color settings, you could decide to change your color settings, maybe from, if you don't like your RGB, default RGB, you could maybe set it to Adobe RGB or whatever thing that you like. And you could just do anything for your profile, for your colors. If you don't have ideas, you could leave it as it is by default, and then you say okay. And once you click OK, it creates your new document. So right here you can see the whole document displayed. The new design, mine is untitled 1 because I did not give it any name. So you can see right here, this is the document created, and this is your workspace and your canvas. And this box you see in the middle here is actually just not present there. It indicates your print area, or it indicates the size of the document you're working on, which is the A5. This area is the area that matters when you're printing, when you're exporting, especially when you're exporting as a PDF. This area matters. This is where you drop your designs, this is where you drop your artworks, this is where you drop anything you're printing or designing or exporting, right? So when you're working, take note of that. But you could work outside on all these places as well, because this is part of your canvas. So you could also drop your side designs around here, and any ideas you have, reference images and things can come into this design and stay at the side, so which makes it really cool. And so we will do a quick breakdown of the user interface right here. So with this whole place, the first thing you're going to find in it is this line here that indicates the file, the edit, and the view, the layout, all the way down to help. This is your menu bar. All right, CorelDraw is divided into a couple of bars and a couple of tools boxes and boxes and a couple of things. So the first thing you find here is your menu bar, which is lined up from the file menu all the way down to the help menu. And these menus are so important. A couple of them have a couple of important things you can find right under them. We're not going to be talking about that right now. We're going to be looking at that in subsequent classes. So under these menus, you can find a couple of important things. If you want to call up the menus, you can see there is letters that are kind of like underlined in each of those menu names. So to call them up, you could hit your alternate and then press this corresponding letter. If you want to call up the file, for example, you could press F after alternate, and you see it displays all the menus under the file. And you could also look at them and see that a couple of other options right under the file menu also have underlined letters, and those underlined letters are also their shortcuts. So let's say you want to do a save as, for example, you could press A and it goes to save as mode, and then here I could indicate a different name. So you could cancel this. And then right under the menu bar, we have the next one, which is called the standard bar. And it's called standard bar because it contains a couple of options that you're going to be using a lot of the time, and things like creating a new document or opening or saving your documents, which is a continuous thing, or importing, opening a document from the cloud, or saving to cloud, or print, cut, copy, paste, all the way down to the end here. You understand? All these ones are standard things, standard tools, undo, redo, things you're going to be doing a lot of, you're going to be using a lot. So it's either you memorize their shortcut or you always use them from here. Whichever one you do is really cool. And then right under the standard bar, we have the properties and options bar, and this is one of the most important bars in CorelDraw because it has kind of like, it displays the properties of the object you select and your page, and also gives you options. So right now, when there is no object on the document, when nothing is in this document, is as empty as anything you could think of, it shows you the properties of the page, and you could also change those properties from here. And that is why it's called properties/options bar, because it gives you options to change them. So you could go from A5 page to A4, and there the size is now bigger. You can see that. And you could also see the size of the paper. So you could also go from just giving it A4 to maybe like a custom size. So let's say we have 210 by, or let's change this from millimeters to, back from the properties bar, let's change this to inches so it's easier for me to put number. So let's say we can change the size, page size to we could do 5 by, press your tab and do 5 by 5 and press enter. So you see, now it tells us that we're using a custom page, right? So we could actually change the dimensions from here, and you can see that it reflects on the document and the page size, right? But we're not doing all this, so we just set it back to A5 and then move towards the units and change it back to inches. We are not going to be running through all the options in the properties bar, but rather we're just saying that this is the properties bar and it contains properties of objects you select, right? And when you don't select any object, it displays the default property of your page. And those options that you select or that you see, or the objects are selected, it gives you options to change some of their properties. And right at the left hand side, at the extreme, we have a series of objects here that represent our tools box, right? And in this tools box, you'll find most of CorelDraw's power, right? So you can find a lot of things you could do. You could create rectangles, you could create ellipse shapes, you could create polygon shapes, you could create text, and the rest of them you could add an artistic media, which is like a brush. You could paint a brush, you could use your line tools to draw custom shapes, and the rest of them you could crop, shape, and the rest. So with all this, and there are tiny arrows attached to them, so you know that they're not just the only tools in the arsenal, right? You could also click on the tiny arrows and discover some other related tools right inside of those tools you can see there. So a couple of other tools there, and even after that you can see use your plus sign to add some other tools that are not really physically present here right now, so you can add them up and it will extend all the way down, right? So that's for the tools box. And then on the extreme right we have the color palette, and this color palette actually works or displays the color that we've previously selected or indicated while we're creating the document. So you can see right here we're looking at our RGB color palette, right? And any color you hover on is going to reflect an RGB value, right? So if you're working with CMYK, if you hover on a color as well, it's going to reflect the CMYK value. It's going to be working as a CMYK color palette, but in this case we're using RGB, so everything here is reflecting as RGB. If you want to see the full color palette, you just click on the double arrows at the bottom there, and it displays all the colors. You can also click on it to send them back, and you could click on the single arrow that faces the bottom to scroll through the colors on the palette. You could do that at the top as well to scroll through till you get to the top, you know. So that's for the color palette, and any color you apply or any object you select you want to apply, you apply the color right from there. And at the bottom here there is also a menu, but we cannot really see anything going on right now. So sorry, there's also a color palette, but we can't see anything happening right now because this color palette is called document color palette, and what it does is it only displays colors that you've used in your document. So let's say I create a box, and with this box I give it a color like blue. Now you look at the bottom side, you see that blue is added there. If I give it another different color, you see the different color is added there. So for every color that I add on my document as I'm designing and doing things, for every color that I bring in, they're all going to be appearing right at the bottom there in the document palette. And that is what the document palette does. It only shows or displays or holds colors that you've used in your document, no more, no less. That's practically what we have like in the whole Corel Draw right here. We have, like I said, we have our canvas or our workspace, and in this workspace this is the print area, and after the print area these areas are like your external areas where you can drop your designs and some other things you want to do, your references and the rest of them. And like we said before, menu bar, standard bar, properties bar, the third one, tools box. I have the default color palette, and then we have the document palette at the base there. And just as an additional thing, this only appears when you select an object. You can find the properties of the fill. You can find the fill property of the object and the outline color and property of the object right at the base, at the bottom right hand side. Right, and just like I said before, when you select an object, if you look at the properties bar, it displays the properties of that selected object, and options gives you options to change some certain things about it. And this is just about everything you can find in your Corel Draw user interface. If you enjoyed this video, do leave a like and drop a comment, and also turn on post notifications, because we are taking this as a series and we're going to be doing a couple of videos to really explain Corel Draw from scratch for those that are interested in learning.